Duh.
One of the first projects greenlit by DC Studios was a sequel season to James Gunn's Peacemaker, Peacemaker Season 2. So ladies and gentlemen, this passion project of James Gunn, let's see if 2 seasons later it really was able to hold up. Hello everyone, I'm K-Swope, and I'm the only YouTuber you know that has the approval of the band Hoobastank. I'm never going to let that down. So Peacemaker Season 2, we're going to review this right here, right now. This video is going to be very much a sequel to my Peacemaker Season 1 review, so I'm going to be following a very similar formula. But that all being said, I'm also not going to reintroduce all of the characters. I did that back in the Season 1 review. Go check that out if you want more. I will, however, start introing some new characters. First some new good guys, and then some new bad guys, and so we're going to go ahead and dive right into that. First things first, new guys, the good guys, or at least the guys who end up being good characters by the end of the season, at least. We have Sasha Bordeaux, a cyborg high-level Argus agent. She works as Rick Flag Sr., right-hand woman, and his main squeeze, if you know what I'm saying. We also have Langston Fleury, how do you say his name? Anyways, he's my new favorite character, other than Vigilante. He's hilarious. Now, he is a loyal Argus agent with bird blindness, and he loves giving people nicknames that they didn't ask for. And that's about it, but he's funny, and I enjoy seeing him on screen.
Yeah, that's cool. It's real cool. Hey, we got a cool guy in the van, huh? Ginger Cool. You mind if I call you that? Ginger Cool?
Now, some new villains we got to talk about. For one, Rick Flag Sr. This is not, by the way, Rick Flag Sr.'s first appearance in the DCU. He's actually appeared in every official, entirely canon DC Universe project so far, come to think of it, because he was a prominent figure in Creature Commando. He led that team in that series, and then he also played a very, very big role in the film Superman. He is not, like, the biggest character, but he gets enough screen time to grant recognition in that film. He is basically the main antagonist of this, to be quite honest. He is sworn in as the acting head of Argus, and of course, for those who don't know, for the uninitiated, he is the father of Rick Flag Jr., who is the Rick Flag that we knew up to this point, the one that we saw in the Suicide Squad, right? And so as you can guess, after Peacemaker gave him the good old stabby in the Corto Maltese, he is not very happy about that, and he's got something of a bone to pick with Peacemaker, which is kind of where we get to see this season really reach its big finale and climax. But we're also introduced to Red Saint Wild. He is a magic animal hunter who is hired by Argus to kill Eagly. Very oddly specific arc. He's got a really big, like, 2-episode beef with Eagly, which is interesting to say the least. Then, of course, we have Keith Smith, who, if you watched my last review, you should know this is Peacemaker's brother. But you're probably asking yourself, I thought Peacemaker accidentally knocked his brother the wrong way, ending his life in Season 1. Well, he did, and this is actually Chris's brother from the alternate universe that we're going to talk about later. There's a big reveal with that. I will save that for a few more moments as we get into plot point A, okay? Plot point A, and there's a lot of plot points in this season, to be quite honest. I kept it to 3 plot points last season. This season, I have, like, what, 5? Yeah, it's 5, and so a lot more to talk about here, but here's what I have written down for my recap of plot point A, okay? Now, I will also say this. It's not really cut and dry what plot points are which. I have a lot of thoughts about that we'll talk about after we go through all the plot points. But in the meantime, just bear with me. The A plot goes something like this. After the events of Season 1, Chris still can't seem to shake his violent history and be seen as a legitimate hero. He also can't seem to work out his feelings for Harcourt. Chris finds a door to another dimension in his father's quantum unfolding chamber, in which his brother Keith is still alive, and his father actually loves him. He leaves his world behind for that one. The 11th Street kids go in after him, only to find out that that world was Earth X, and everyone there is a... In the end of plot point A, we get a nice story about how the grass is not always greener on the other side. Now, this story is very interesting. I just gave a brief summary. It's a lot more nuanced than it really sounds, but that's the gist of it. Generally, I think it's a really good character-driven story for Chris specifically, and so I did enjoy seeing that. I really enjoyed seeing Keith as an adult, seeing what him and Chris's relationship would look like. I also really, really liked the character of this version of Augie Smith, because he kind of goes on a tangent that gets kind of cut short, but he starts talking, and I'm like, bro, you are spitting fire right now, because that version of Augie, he is not some type of crazy, evil, racist cult leader guy, right? His philosophy is this: he lives in this world. He's not shared the viewpoints that everyone else does, but he still kind of coexists with them. And his philosophy is that one day when he answers for everything that he's done here on Earth, he's just going to stop big monsters that are objectively hurting people, and that's kind of that. And I think, you know what? That's quite noble. I respect that. I kind of wish that a lot of superhero content nowadays, in fact, a lot of just content in general where we have good guys and bad guys, would just stick to the idea of, okay, there's an objective evil, and I'm just going to fight that objective evil, okay? I think the nuance was good and good for a time. I'm getting sort of tired of that. Everyone's trying to making everything more important than it really is. So hearing him give that speech, although cut short because he unfortunately gets shanked a couple of times.
I fight the madman murders and monsters in front of me because that's all I can control. And at the end of my life, when I stand in judgment before God, I hope that he knows that I did the best that I could, and I left this world a better place than when I came.
Yeah, that's not fun. But it kind of awakened a nostalgia in me back to when I was a child, and I'm like, okay, yeah, the bad guys are just bad guys. They just do bad things. I mean, do we really need to make it all nuanced? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess that's for everyone else to decide, but it kind of beckoned me there, and so I really like that character. Not to mention, he was not a bad guy either, like he was in the original universe. So either way, kind of interesting. Bit of a tangent, I know. But this plot point, generally speaking, I thought was pretty decent. There were some fun things involved there. It was really a bulk of the plot had to do with this very thing, and so that's why I considered it plot point A. But again, it was decent. It didn't like knock my socks off, but I still had a good time with this story, and as a result, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. The B plot goes a little something like this. Argus and Rick Flag are hunting down dimensional disturbances due to the events of Superman. Not going to mention anything else there in case you didn't see that movie yet. Just keep that in mind. This leads them back to Chris and the previously mentioned quantum unfolding chamber. Flag wants to capture it with extra prejudice because Peacemaker is involved. In the end, they take it from him and find a new dimension called Salvation. In the end, they capture Chris and leave him stranded there, okay? Ends on quite a cliffhanger, I will say. Now, this I think is really interesting because all the plots are very character-driven in this season, which is very, very good, I think, because this is like the big Rick Flag plot. Rick Flag is going to be playing a really big part, I believe, in the DC universe going forward, and so they're really establishing his character, and I think that was really, really intentional, especially from how we saw his heavy use in Creature Commandos, and then how we've seen him use, he was in Superman, now he's here in this, and we're sort of seeing the evolution of his character, so he's definitely going to be popping up again in there somewhere, and so I'm really excited to see where and how that turns out, because he's also very morally gray. He's kind of Amanda Waller-esque in that area, which is very, very fascinating. But either way, yeah, I thought that was interesting. Again, great cliffhanger, and I'm really excited to see where they go with this character. I think this is a little bit better than Peacemaker himself's story arc this time, so I give this one maybe an 8 out of 10. The C plot is with Harcourt. She and Chris had an awesome date, ending with them kissing on a boat hosting a Nelson concert. Harcourt, in this season, is grappling with her feelings for Chris while also getting over her previous relationship with Rick Flag Jr. Bombshell. No one probably saw that coming, but it actually makes a lot of sense. And we also must mention, once again, she's grappling with this because Chris offed Rick Flag Jr. in the Corto Maltese in the events of the Suicide Squad. Yes, bringing that back into this picture again. But I think this is interesting too. She's a very conflicted character, and so she didn't seem very nuanced in the first season of Peacemaker, and they really, again, bring a lot of that character stuff there. And it makes sense. Like, I understand why she would be so hesitant and so flippy-floppy with Chris, even though, she's obviously attracted to Chris. Chris obviously, very obviously, likes her. I understand that very, very well. I think it's written pretty well, and that makes a lot of sense, too. She also, I forgot to mention this in my write-up, but she is also dealing with the fact that she cannot get a job because she's basically been blacklisted from all government intelligence agencies. This also puts her in a unique spot where Rick Flag Sr. begins to offer her things to betray Peacemaker, and that kind of ties into all of it also. But either way, pretty interesting. Again, I think it could be a little more compelling, but it's decent. I like it. It's good. 7 out of 10. Now, the D plot, like I said, so many plots here. Adebayo now has a hunger for danger and espionage after the events of Peacemaker Season 1. She tries to start a private detective agency, which ends up putting a rift between her and her domestic partner, but in the end, she decides to call things off with her. And then the 11th Street kids go ahead and they start up Checkmate, which is very interesting. A little bit of a DC Comics deep cut, if you want to call it that. They also recruit some de facto Argus members, okay? And those ones being the two people I mentioned previously, Bordeaux and Bird Blindness Dude. But also at this point, I want to mention this too because I have no other excuse to bring this up. Argus in this season recruited Judo Master, right? And so Judo Master comes and joins them. So they get the 3 Argus people, and so they start this agency. And so I think it's really interesting. I really want to see where they're going to go with this. But with the way they ended this season, I'm kind of head scratching. But anyways, this plot point was really small, did not get a whole lot of spotlight. I mean, it got a few scenes here and there. But, I mean, the checkmate thing was really cool. I think everything else I don't really care that much about. I think Adebayo starting her own private detective agency after just the whole butterfly thing, it just seems way... She's jumping way further. Baby steps first. Baby steps first. And so that was not really compelling to me. I don't care about her relationship drama, to be quite honest. So because the only thing I care about is how it ended with the whole checkmate thing, 5 out of 10. Now, the E-plot. This is an interesting one to talk about. It's one that, I'm going to be honest, if you have not seen the season... First of all, what are you even doing here? But second of all, it's going to be hard for you to actually believe that I'm saying this because it just feels so out of left field. But essentially, here's what it is. After Eagly nearly massacres an entire Argus squad trying to break into Chris's house, Argus hires Red Saint Wild to hunt him down. He believes that Eagly is the, quote, primal eagle who rules over all eagles. Again, I'm not making this up. After Red Saint Wild kills an innocent eagle, whom he thought was Eagly, the legend turns out to be true, and Eagly summons a swarm of eagles to essentially rip him to shreds. And yeah, it's very strange, very out of left field, and this whole arc takes place over like 2 episodes, and it's just never talked about or referenced again. So that is weird. 3 out of 10. It's just so out of left pocket. Part of me likes it because of that, but it also feels like it's such a weird thing that doesn't really add anything to the season. In fact, it adds nothing to the season, to be quite honest. And don't get me wrong, I love Eagly, okay? Again, easily top 5 favorite superhero pets. But, Now, in my normal reviews, I usually have a good section and a bad section. I have a little bit of that today, just a few notes I want to talk about. First things first. James Gunn uses a lot of Foxy Shazam in this season, okay? That's the band. They do the theme song, Oh Lord, okay? And they have 2 other songs in this season with a 3-song total, and that is the most that any artist was featured in a single season of Peacemaker. Not to mention, last season they had a song used, so they've had a total of 4 songs in the series Peacemaker, okay? But I'm not complaining about that, because Foxy Shazam is one of the greatest bands I have heard in my entire life, and James Gunn 100% turned me on to that based on the playlists I've listened to and the soundtracks he's using in his movies, okay? I've looked up some Foxy Shazam. I love Foxy Shazam. Oh Lord might just be the greatest song of all time. I'm just saying this right here, right now. Not to mention, in my head, there was one album that I think stood above the rest, okay? Just period. That was Green Day's American Idiot, okay? Still love that album. It's still great. It's still a perfect album, okay? But now there's another album that I think is also a perfect album. So these 2 are, I think, the 2 greatest albums I've heard in my entire life. Those ones, of course, American Idiot, but then also Foxy Shazam's 2010 self-titled album. So good. It is so good. Everything I love about music and in music is in this album in abundance, and it is amazing. So I love that album. I love Foxy Shazam. So good. So good. I also think this season does a really good job at world building. I feel like I'm getting a really good feel after, going back, watching these episodes, kind of skimming through to get this review put out. I feel like I have a really good feel as to what they're kind of building the direction of the DCU to go in, at least for now, and I really, really like that. I mentioned everything with Rick Flag. We see Salvation at the end, which is going to play a big part. I would assume in Man of Tomorrow, we're going to have to see about that. But either way, I think we have a clear direction, and we are moving toward that direction, and I quite like that with what I've seen from these 3 projects. It's kind of subtle, and I think that's good, honestly, because if it's too heavy-handed, that might be, a problem. I do think the way the season ended was a little rough. Moving into the bad section now, of course, because they really resolve Chris, the plot point A, they resolved that mostly in the second to last episode after they take him back from Earth X. So that's kind of weird, I think. And in the last episode, it feels like it's mostly just straight world building and then just tying up a few loose ends. Did I dislike the episode? No, I personally enjoyed it quite a lot. However, it did feel very disjointed from the rest of the season. And the season just kind of ended on what felt like a little bit of a doozy, a bit of a downer. It did get me excited and hyped to see where the DC Universe goes from here, but I really, as a season finale, not a fan. I was going to say, too, I said it for the first season, I'll say it for this season, just needless raunchiness every now and then. I mean, people like to swear. I mean, the swearing is one thing, but the fact people just got to make jokes and just have conversations that I'm like, you don't need to have this conversation. It does absolutely nothing for the plot. That kind of stuff. I'm like, bruh, come on. like edit minutes worth of jokes out of each episode, and it would not take away from the plot whatsoever. And so that's just kind of, less than stellar writing, honestly. But not a fan of that. Also, I got to mention this. Episode 7, another episode that I generally quite liked, okay? Second to last episode. But it feels really preachy, and it does it screws some things up, okay? And I guess I don't like to use this term, but maybe I'm a little sort of offended by at least one specific aspect of that episode. First, I gotta say, though, the build-up, okay? The episode 6 and episode 7, when they find out they're on Earth X, is hilarious. The fact that Chris does not notice is absolutely hilarious. I think that is just comedy gold. But we are in episode 7 now, and what happens is they go to find out that there is no, how should I word this? Ethnic diversity, okay? Everyone's just very, very white. And there's a specific scene where Judo Master saves out a bio, and they're kind of talking after playing some weird version of Scrabble from an alternate universe. They're talking about how they've like wiped out all, basically all diversity pretty much has been like eradicated, blah, blah, blah. And they're talking about how certain religions have been basically completely gone, excommunicated. And then Adebayo, out of like a reaction, uses the term Jesus Christ, which I don't approve of that either. But she uses that, and then Judo Master's like, oh, they love that guy. And I'm thinking to myself, James Gunn, you do not if that's what you're saying, then you clearly do not understand the Bible or the gospel at all, because that's not at all what the Bible preaches. Now, I understand makes a little more sense to me if you got something against like Christians, because Christians, again, we're flawed, broken people. We screw the pooch, okay? We do that, okay? Straight up. We're not innocent of anything. But to say that, the mustache people love Jesus, that is just the most backwards, messed up thing I think I may have ever heard, to be quite honest, because that is the furthest thing from the truth. Everything that Jesus taught and preached and showed people was completely opposite of what those mustache-twirling bad guys did, okay? Very, very different. Not to mention, when Jesus was asked what's the greatest commandment of all, he said, love God, obviously. But the second one, following closely after, being love your neighbor as yourself, right? So obviously, if you look at certain things that those certain people did, the Earth X people, okay, right? That's not loving your neighbor at all. So, like, what the crap, dude? Like, what the literal crap? I'm very, very disappointed by that joke. And yeah, it did not land well for me at all. In fact, the rest of the episode, it had, I mentioned before, it had some other preachy moments here and there, but that's the one that really grinds my gears, if you will. And so, yeah, that's something I really struggle with, and that is going to affect this season general review. In fact, a lot of things are going to, but that's just something I feel like ranting about because I did not appreciate it whatsoever. Anyways, I've been rambling for a while. Let's land this plane. Generally, Peacemaker Season 2, did I enjoy it? Yes. However, I think the first season was still better. I think it was just a tighter written plot. It was more linear and straightforward, where it's like, okay, here are the threats. You are going to take out the threats, eliminate them, and of course there ended some hiccups along the way, but they ended up doing it single-handedly, and in the end, the good guys win. And so I think that was good. Again, very nice, very linear plot. This season felt a little more all over the place. We had some, good linear plots that I think went to some good places, but in the end, I was just not left very satisfied, not anywhere near the same level of satisfaction that I felt at the end of the first season of Peacemaker. So I'm probably going to have to give this one maybe a 7 out of 10 compared to the others. Hey, if you had a great time watching this review, let me know by leaving me a comment and hit that subscribe button. More reviews like this on the way out. Of course, Peacemaker is wrapped up, so we have more reviews for other things, other TV shows, other movies, things like that. Make sure you guys stick around for that. But in the meantime, I'll catch you guys all later. But hey, I'm K-Swope. Jesus loves you. Never forget that. And I will see you in the next one.